Today, we're going to dive into a new report that reveals how the Iran war could affect America's strategic Bitcoin reserve. And funny enough, it comes back to America's plan to be the global Bitcoin superpower of the world. Pay close attention to everything mentioned in this clip, and then we'll connect the dots to show you how Bitcoin is playing an even bigger role in the Middle East than most people think. Here we go.
Signed an executive order officially creating our strategic Bitcoin reserve.
This is something I haven't heard anybody talk about. Iran was one of the top Bitcoin miners in the world due to their subsidized energy program, some of which was subsidized by Biden relieving sanctions, by the way. They were trading on Bitcoin to avoid other sanctions, too, just like how they're demanding it in tolls through the Strait of Hormuz. But since Trump started this bombing campaign, 77% of their crypto mining has stopped, which in conjunction to the Clarity Act, when Congress ever gets off their rear end, will be an explosion in the crypto sphere, literally making millionaires overnight and potentially generating enough revenue to partially offset our national debt. It's not just a war with Iran. Sure, they can't get a nuke, but there are so many moving parts here. This is why I keep telling you, guys, like, I'm putting my neck out there by supporting this. I realize that, and I'm in. Like, I'm not BSing you. Like, just please hold out a little bit longer.
Well, interesting. I don't know what he means by the end, just hold out a little longer. I don't know if he's saying hodl or if he's saying, you know, trust Trump in the plan. But I do like how he framed this, that there are a lot of moving parts currently happening in the Middle East. And as we've been discussing on the show, and I think everyone's vaguely aware of this idea that, and I don't mean to maybe put this in negative light, but it seems like misdirection is a part of how these operations are playing out in the Middle East. Part of the kind of status quo, the way that this works is you don't really know what's going on. A lot of people call it the fog of war, et cetera, but it seems like misdirection coming from the Trump administration is, and I know I got a little heat from it yesterday, this idea of Opti's a plan truster now. No, I'm just saying, if you're looking at everything objectively, there's some interesting stuff happening. So that is a clip from Newsmax, and they have 3.6 million followers on Twitter. It was a beginning clip of a longer clip. My friend actually sent this to me, and he's like, yo, check this out. This is very interesting. And I saw it. I'm like, oh, wow, I might actually use that for the show. Then I watched the clip, and I think on the surface, you're like, man, that's some high-level BS here. But I went to the article that they were quoting in this video. It's from Yahoo Finance. And of course, the title, Iran Bitcoin hash rate dropped 77% over the past quarter amid conflict. And in this first paragraph is where I found their source material. And I'll read that for you. And then we'll go to the source material. And it goes, Iran's Bitcoin hash rate fell approximately 77% over the past quarter, from roughly 9 exahashes per second to 2 exahashes per second, as U.S. and Israeli military strikes disrupted power infrastructure and forced an estimated 427,000 active mining machines offline, according to a hash rate index report published Monday by Ian Philpott, marketing director at Luxor Technology. Now, you guys are probably familiar with Luxor, so I went over to their website and I was looking for this report, and I am almost positive. Actually, I'm like completely positive. I can guarantee you that this is what they were quoting. And this is titled Global Hash Rate Heat Map Update Q2 2026. The latest update to hash rate index's global hash rate heat map. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will just kind of read some of the highlights and then the parts that are particular to what is happening in Iran. Here's a TLDR. Global hash rate declined to 1,004 exahashes in Q2 of 2026 from 1,066 exahashes in Q1 of 2026. Minus 5.8% quarter-over-quarter decline reflects ongoing down cycle. Bitcoin price decline roughly 50% from October peak, pushed hash price to all-time lows, forcing older equipment offline. Mining profitability, not energy or policy, is the primary driver of current geopolitical shifts. Mining concentration is stable at 65.2% in the top 3, which is, of course, US, Russia, and China. Composition shifting as marginal equipment goes offline. Modern hardware deploys selectively. Pakistan moderated from plus 1,233% year over year to roughly 3 exahashes. Kyrgyzstan, I can't say that, guys. Sustained plus 167% quarter over quarter. Ethiopia holds number 8 despite permit freeze. Policy clarity increasingly matters in down cycle, but only as a secondary factor to machine profitability. Now, that's the overview. Let me go down here, and you can see the top 10 countries by market share, of course. U.S. is still leading this. We have roughly, 37% of the global hash rate, and then followed by Russia at 16.9% and China at 12%. Now, a big leader, I think, here is Paraguay, which we talk about here constantly. A lot of miners are moving down to Paraguay. And then to
Paraguay.
Dude, I sound like a Valley girl, all right? We're not going to do my Hispanic accent on this. But anyways, the last 5 is the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Canada, Ethiopia, Kazakhstan, and Indonesia. Now, number 9 is interesting because as we know, if you've been in the space for a while, a lot of the miners that left China, well, not a lot of them, but a significant portion of the miners that left China went to Kazakhstan. And I do have the heat map for you guys, so I will show you guys kind of the breakdown here. But here we go. Notable declines. Iran is down 0.6% quarter over quarter from geopolitical conflict in the region, which is an interesting metric to just look at on itself. Remember last week, we got the big news coming out that Iran wanted to get payments for toll fees paid in Bitcoin, which made all of the headlines. And then we're seeing that there's another secondary effect here. And you could say, I'm sure if we wanted to go full clickbait on you, we could say that, hey, the Trump administration is bombing Iran's Bitcoin mining infrastructure. Bitcoin mining infrastructure. I don't think that's necessarily the case per se. I think this is probably a side effect. Again, as the clip said, there's a lot of moving parts here. I would make the case that most likely, and this is probably like the easiest connection here, a lot of the state-backed mining that the IRGC was doing, that Iran was doing, was basically hooked up to their more traditional energy infrastructure. If you got cheap energy, if you got almost free energy, basically, and you have excess energy, then a good way to profit off of that is, of course, to plug in some Bitcoin miners. Now, going further down here, there is another little blurb here where it talks about the Middle East. And I think there is an interesting little nugget in this paragraph. And it goes Middle East. Geopolitical conflict in the region has had a clear impact on Iran. Loss of 7 exahashes quarter over quarter, and it could have a ripple effect for neighboring countries. The UAE and Oman each hold 3% of global hash rate with flat to modest growth patterns. Both reflect government-backed long-term infrastructure positioning rather than competitive expansion urgency. And I believe there's one more segment here. Maybe not. Oh, yeah, here we go. Very end. Geopolitical shocks create localized disruption, not systemic risk. Iran's loss of roughly 7 exahashes quarter over quarter from regional conflict demonstrates mining's vulnerability to geopolitical events, which we talked about, and we will expand a little bit on that last point in a minute. However, the impact was contained to Iran, and neighboring UAE and Oman remain stable. Global hash rate at roughly 1,000 exahashes persists because no single region controls enough capacity to threaten network continuity. Regional disruptions redistribute hash rate rather than destroy it, which obviously goes into the larger picture that, as Bitcoiners, we all know, Bitcoin is decentralized. There is no single point of failure here, which even if we're watching this happen, you could say, hey, look, war is bad across the board. But if we had a single point of failure and we saw a significant portion of hash rate come off the network, then that would lead to a more existential threat to the Bitcoin network at large. But we're not seeing that. Obviously, hey, Iran is getting hit right now. A lot of the hash power is coming offline. Who knows if that will be able to come back online? Who knows if they were not destroyed. Now, I do have the heat map here, and then Nico and I will kind of discuss maybe the broader picture here. So I'm going to start with the 2026 heat map of Q1. And again, this is data.hashrateindex.com from Luxor. So shouts out to them. So Q1 of 2026, I'm gonna pick some notable countries here that have been in the news in regards to operations coming from the Trump administration. Of course, we have Iran here with a market share of almost 1% at 0.84%. Hash rate amount, 9 exahashes. And then, of course, Venezuela with 0.469% of global hash rate at about 5 exahashes. And then again, you know, the US here at 37.5% of global market share with 400 exahashes. Now, let's update to the latest numbers of Q2. And we have Iran at 0.2% of market share. Again, the 70% drop. Now they have about 2 exahashes, at least according to the research done by Luxor. And then we have Venezuela down to just 0.5% at still 5 exahashes. And the US is at 37.4. So a little bit of a decline from the US, marginal, if insignificant decline from Venezuela, and then a huge decline from Iran. Now, why am I bringing up the Venezuela in this context? Well, as we all know, the U.S. government did a 24-hour, it was a weekend operation where they took down Maduro. And we are seeing some of the significant geopolitical ramifications of this, as I was covering yesterday, with oil tankers leaving the Strait of Hormuz and coming into the Gulf of America. Still feels weird. I still feel like it's Gulf of Mexico. But anyways, the real story here is in the context of Iran. As we know, the Trump administration has said, we want the U.S. to be the Bitcoin superpower of the world. Now, I don't think this was a direct operative from the Trump administration to basically say, hey, we're going to bomb Iran so that we can take off their Bitcoin mining infrastructure. Because as we know, there has been a big political push on the idea of Iran using Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies and stablecoins to route around sanctions. I think that conversation is only going to increase as we are starting to see this slowly evolve, and who knows how long this is going to happen. But we are seeing more news stories about this idea of, hey, maybe we need to put more guardrails on Bitcoin and stablecoins because of sanctions, because this is making OFAC's job harder. Well, hey, you know, if people go to Bitcoin, then it's almost like, you know, the traditional financial guardrails don't work anymore. Now, we are seeing that there is some debate over whether Trump really allowed Iran to get paid in Bitcoin over these payment fees. The last couple of days, if you're following along on this, that has been one of the big points of contention, that Trump basically said, hey, we did not agree with Iran on them taking fees for boats going through the Strait of Hormuz. And if you're a Bitcoiner, what are you hearing? They're like, oh no. Maybe they didn't agree on this idea, but now they're realizing, wait, we can't actually let Iran get paid in Bitcoin for, you know, what they say. They said we can't let Iran extort boats to get fees for oil tankers going through the Strait of Hormuz, for oil to, you know, get out of the Middle East. And obviously, if you follow the story, even just a semblance of, you know, understanding here, how are they going to get paid? Stable coins and Bitcoin. That's what they wanted. They're like, you know, we don't really want to touch dollars anymore. Unintended side effect, a lot of the boats are coming to the U.S., so the dollar hegemony, the petrodollar system, almost got stronger overnight, if you're kind of being honest. Now we're seeing on the flip side, another aspect of the, quote, Bitcoin superpower of the world is Iran was close to getting 1% of global hash rate. Now it's seemingly decimated. Who knows if they got burnt up, bombed, what's going on? Maybe that just energy infrastructure isn't there anymore. But the implications here are very interesting. Anyways, Nika, jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wanted to make this today's video title, but perhaps it was too spicy.
Which one?
With like a B-2 bomber and Trump just smiling. Like, did Trump bomb Iran to decrease? Again,
It's kind of a stretch, but hey,
No,
it's what happened.
the incentives are there, ladies and gentlemen. Did Trump bomb Iran to basically destroy Iran's capability of Bitcoin mining? Of course, that wasn't the primary reason. But again, as that new, and we're not the only ones thinking this. Like, we played that news clip in the very beginning, and the guy connected. Maybe the guy's been watching Simply Bitcoin. Who knows? But the point that we're trying to make is, like, look, like, at the end of the day, Trump's son owns one of the largest Bitcoin mining companies in the world, American Bitcoin mining.
I actually didn't think about that.
Right.
Wow.
Trump, his whole initiative was about Bitcoin being the strategic Bitcoin reserve in the world. It doesn't look good for the Trump administration to go back and basically say, hey, listen, guys, by the way, Iran is only taking toll payments to cross the Strait of Hormuz in Bitcoin, right? So again, lots of coincidences, right? And there's this very famous quote that I love to say by someone that I could mention on YouTube, but it's like, there are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences. And again, no one is better than their incentives. So is it too much of a stretch to say that at least part of the motivation for bombing Iran was to destroy Iran's electrical infrastructure so they wouldn't mine as much Bitcoin as they've been mining? Because at the same time, right, Trump's kid owns one of the largest Bitcoin miners in the United States. And if anyone doesn't understand how Bitcoin mining works, ladies and gentlemen, the pie stays the same. But if you have a decrease in hash rate, if that hash rate goes away, you have less competition. If you have less competition, you mine more coins, right? So again, is it too much of a stretch to say that? No. At the same time, as Opti mentioned about the Office of Foreign Asset Control, and the whole sanctions narrative that is going to be propagated by the Elizabeth Warren camp. Elizabeth Warren sits on the Senate Banking Committee, right? And we're going to be covering this later on today's show. The Democratic Party does not want a competition to what they see is going to be a future central bank digital currency. So we know they're against Bitcoin for that reason. X just announced a payment platform. Of course, Elizabeth Warren went on X and saying, we can't allow that to happen. They don't want an alternative to the U.S. banking. They don't want an alternative to the U.S. financial rails of which politicians control, of which politicians can censor. Because if politicians can't censor, if politicians can't control, then you can't have a Canadian truckers protest type of situation 2.0. Because if they can't freeze the bank accounts of people, because most people are using Bitcoin, then guess what happens? They could say, oh, stop doing that. But people are like, yeah, but like, I don't want to because what you're doing is wrong. And they don't have a tool to freeze their money. That's like one of the strongest tools politicians can use to incentivize a certain type of behavior. And we know that they're willing to do this, not only with the Canadian truckers protests, but also with what happened in Russia when the Ukraine and Russia conflict started. What was one of the first things that the Western government started to do? They started seizing all the assets of not only Russia, but Russian citizens, right? So what happens if that power gets taken away from them? They don't want that power to get taken away from them. I don't think any politician wants any semblance of power taken away from them. So what's fascinating to me is how Bitcoin is now involved in this geopolitical type of situation that we're seeing worldwide. It's fascinating to see. And again, this plays into a lot of the theories and a lot of the things that we've been talking about for years now. And look, I really want to post up. Opti, take it while I find this thing by Nick Szabo. It's a really good
while
post.
you were talking it, actually, when I initially saw this story, it reminded me of, I forget what he was in the military, but of Jason Lowery's soft war thesis. And I I was a little skeptical on his thesis. I never read the book. I kind of got the spark notes of it, but he was basically saying that where we are going from here, we're going to see nation states battling over hash rate. We're going to see countries battling over not only securing the mining capabilities of Bitcoin, or sorry, of, you know, decentralized money, but they would try to attract as much capital as possible. And I forget when that book came out, but it was about 2 years ago at minimum. And now he is in, I believe, a higher position, doing other things that are still, you know, connected with the, you know, the military or the army or what. I don't know exactly what his rank was, or, you know, and what corner of the military or army he was in. But
this is Nick Szabo's direct quote. He says, quote, Iran is no longer effectively under sanctions. Do try to keep up with events.
Yeah, facts.
And that's like the crux of it, ladies and gentlemen, right? Is like, this is the crux of it, is like, this is what we're gonna go and experience, you know, as the human race, as society. I told you guys that we're living through this very tumultuous, pivotal technological shift in human history. And the book, The Sovereign Individual, made this thesis back in the 90s, right, about information technologies. And what we saw during the first Trump administration, then the Biden administration, and then the second Trump administration, which I think it's all over now since Elon acquired X, was I told you guys that we were going to see what I coined is the disintermediation of information. Right. And we saw that. We saw how much the Biden administration, they even tried to like release their own version of the Ministry of Truth. And you had that crazy lady that was like singing, and she had like the googly eyes, and she
looked like what's that one with the little songbird and Jennifer Lawrence?
Yeah. She was like singing. She was like, you know, disinformation, blah 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 blah. Like it was crazy. But the point that I'm trying to make is like, who gets to define what is disinformation, right? And governments had this unique ability before the internet to be able to control the flows of information. And they would do that through mainstream media sources. I said this the other day. If you're watching mainstream media, and if you're consuming your media on alternative media, which I would make the case is now mainstream media, you are getting a totally different reality. You live in two different alternative realities, and governments were able to co-opt and control the legacy media outlets. So the handful of media channels, the handful of publications, right? But they can't do the same on the internet. Now you have Tucker, you have Candace, you have other content creators that are
the OG, that are Nico Jones,
that exactly aren't, you know, towing the party line. They're not exactly going along with the current events, and they have massive audience. They have younger audience. They have the new generation that are listening to them. And again, it's a lot harder for the U.S. government to sell the war in Iran. It's a lot harder for the U.S. government to sell something like central bank digital currencies as long as alternative media existed. I once read a very powerful quote. I think it came from Jack Posobiec. And it was something along the lines of, the war in Iraq in 2003 wouldn't have happened if social media would have existed. Now, why am I saying all this? How does this connect? Well, what we are on the verge of entering into is the disintermediation of money. And that is truly for all of the marbles. Look at how they reacted to the disintermediation of information. Look at how much they pushed back. Look how much they censored. Look at how much they deplatformed. Anybody that didn't have an approved narrative talking point was othered, was banned, was deplatformed, was villainized, was sued. And then that is completely against the First Amendment. The First Amendment specifically protects the right of U.S. citizens to speak freely. What we found out with the Twitter files when Elon acquired X was that the U.S. government was specifically putting pressure on social media platforms to censor the free speech of Americans. So they lost that war. And in Europe, they're still doubling down. They still have a little bit more control. But as Soon as Elon acquired X, he freed the bird. Now you have open communication. Now platforms like Rumble, we're a huge fan of Rumble as live streamers. It's very difficult now to once control the narrative like they have in the past. Now we're trying to get ahead of it. Again, we are tomorrow's Bitcoin news today, as we like to call ourselves. If you guys have been watching Simply Bitcoin for years, you guys have noticed that we have literally predicted a lot of the things that were going to happen, not because we're geniuses, but because of the game theory and the incentive structure. So what is going to happen over the next 5 years? What we're going to see is the disintermediation of money. There was a major announcement yesterday that I think a lot of people didn't pay attention to, but Tether announced their wallet. They call it the People's Wallet. It's a self-custodial wallet that allows you to send and receive Bitcoin, Tether Gold, and Tether USDT. So all of a sudden, no matter where you are around the world, you have the ability to receive US dollars. You can convert those US dollars to Bitcoin. You can convert those US dollars to gold. And now you can send those US dollars anywhere around the world, right? So if you are from the political philosophy of Elizabeth Warren, who wants a central bank digital currency very similar to the European Union, very similar to Christine Lagarde, very similar to the European Central Bank, you are freaking the F out. You don't want your central bank digital currency to have an alternative because, to use Christine Lagarde's own words, they see that alternative as an escape valve. If people have an alternative, to leave the system that steals from them through currency debasement, that censors them at the whims of a politician, and they have the alternative of something like Bitcoin, which is censorship resistant and can't be debased, what do you think people are going to do over time? They're going to pick Bitcoin because it is the better alternative. And this isn't just a theory anymore. I've been saying it for years, but now we're seeing it play out. Now we're seeing it play out in Iran. Now, what's fascinating, though, is, again, how the military plays into this, how the economy plays into this, how the whole geopolitical situation plays into this. Because I can't say with 100% certainty that there was no thoughts in the back of Trump's head when he decided to go and bomb Iran, thinking that, wait a second, if we bomb Iran and their hash rate drops, my son's Bitcoin mining company is going to become that much more profitable. This is where we are in the movie, ladies and gentlemen. But as Alex Gladstein wrote in his very famous article, which I keep referencing, Bitcoin is a Trojan horse for freedom, everyone is going to be inevitably attracted to number go up technology. What they don't realize is that with number go up technology comes freedom go up technology, and they're inextricably linked. You can't separate the two. So if Trump is letting Bitcoin into the US financial system, and if people continue to take self-custody of their Bitcoin, again, he can't resist the incentives of number go up. What he's not realizing is ultimately people are going to start saying, hey, wait a second. Why don't I just take self-custody of this? This Bitcoin is actually like kind of like better money. Like it's not a question of if this will happen. It's a question of when this will happen, how long will it take to happen? And it's also a question of what is going to happen during the process. And I'm really excited because this is going to give us a ton of things to talk about for the next 5 years. And again, we're going to be your guide through the separation of money and state, because ultimately that's what I'm witnessing. We saw it with the separation of information and state, and we saw how much they fought back with that. Guys, you have no idea how much they're going to fight this. They're going to fight. This is going to be like the Battle of Stalingrad, man. This is going to be like building to building close quarter battle, literally that type of warfare, like very, extremely, day by day, very messy, taking 1 inch at a time. It's not going to be something that they're going to be like, oh, you guys found better money that requires rules without rulers. Well, you know what? We're just going to go gently into that good night. They're not going to do that. They're going to fight. They're going to fight to retain their power to create money for free that everyone else has to work for. And I have an article for you guys later on in the show that even shows you that Elizabeth Warren is now even worried about X. And again, remember where Elizabeth Warren stands. Elizabeth Warren stands, she is the head of the central banking of the banking committee for the Democratic Party. Now, because Trump went against his base, which was why I was so against the Iran war, there is a high probability that we will have a Democrat president in the White House in 2028. And there's an even higher probability that the Democrats will not only take the House in November, but they'll also take the Senate, right? So again, they haven't changed their stance. They want a central bank digital currency. They want a continuation of the Federal Reserve System. And the reason for that is not only to be able to control the flows and the issuance of money, but also it is a core necessity for them in order to continue a big part of a big part of their political philosophy. Printing money allows wealth redistribution, and it allows wealth redistribution in a very kind of nefarious, kind of like under the table type of mechanism. What is that mechanism? Well, essentially, every time the government prints money, it's a wealth redistribution from the lower and middle classes back to the wealthy and back to the government. Now, the government uses that, of course, to fund welfare, to fund political programs, and essentially they go to their voters and say, hey guys, you guys want free healthcare, you guys want free college, we could promise you all of these things that are quote unquote free, that of course the US government can't afford because it's like $40 trillion in debt, but they can continue to offer those things as long as they have the power of the money printer. So again, it's so fascinating here because it's not only the Iran story, right? But it's also Bitcoin getting integrated into these global geopolitical massive events. We saw little tiny inklings of that, little tidbits of that during the Russia and Ukraine conflict, but now it's just accelerating with the Iran, United States, and Israel conflict. So that to me is absolutely fascinating. And if you still think that Bitcoin is not here to stay, ladies and gentlemen, despite all of this happening, you have Morgan Stanley, Citibank, and other banks, which I can't name right now, that are all saying, hey, we are offering services to custody Bitcoin on behalf of our clients. And then you literally have the head of Morgan Stanley that is going to be making an appearance at the the head of digital assets at Morgan Stanley that is going to be making an appearance at the Bitcoin conference. She literally went on Legacy Financial mainstream TV and said, hey, the Bitcoin ETF was the most successful ETF in Morgan Stanley's history, right? So right now, what Bitcoin is doing is that it's incentivizing Wall Street with number go up technology while simultaneously freeing the world in the process. Bitcoin is literally the Trojan horse for freedom. They can't resist number go up, but they don't realize that if you allow number go up through the door, you also allow freedom go up through the door. So that's going to be the battle of our time. That's going to be the battle of the next decade. You're going to see the continuation of fiat, which is central bank digital currencies. Those players are going to fight. They're going to fight to keep that power of being able to create money for free. And then you have the alternative, the non-sovereign alternative, which is Bitcoin. And I could even make the argument that is stable coins as well. I would say stable coins is a non-sovereign alternative. I know it's a digital dollar, but again, think about the differences between opening a traditional bank account, all the steps that you need to go through versus literally just downloading a wallet and having the ability to send and receive US dollars in the digital form via USDT, right? And not to mention the fact that the Tether guys are hardcore Bitcoiners, so they believe in the ethos of Bitcoin. So anyways, all of this is extremely exciting. It gives Opti and I tons of things to talk about, which we're super hyped because we were definitely going through like
it was a little slow.
It was a slowish period. So I'm glad that this type of news is picking up. And also too, to kind of throw a curveball, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going on record and I'm saying this, guys, just like this bull market was different, this bear market might be playing out differently as well. Sailor went.
We got him.
Sailor went on the Bankless podcast and he said verbatim, he believes that we might see $100,000, $120,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year, which again would be unprecedented, would break the 4-year cycle theory, and we're in completely uncharted territory. Now, if you think about what a bottom usually and typically feels like, it usually typically feels like despair. It feels like boredom. You get these types of comments like, oh, you know, I could find better returns somewhere else. You get this general apathy, right? We definitely felt that. We've definitely been feeling that for the last 2 months. Opti, the backstream turned off. So, you know, this is very exciting times, very uncharted territory. And we're right in the middle of all this, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a Bitcoiner and you're taking Bitcoin in self-custody, you literally have a front row seat to the revolution. You are partaking in this revolution, which is extremely, extremely exciting. And again, revolution implies that, you know, you have people rising up. No. Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution. You are voting with your wallet. You are voting to opt out of the very said system. Anyways, guys, we're going to have a guest joining us in about 3 minutes or so. So we're going to be right back after the commercial break. We have tons to get to. We have 2 people joining us from Bitcoin Magazine. We're going to be talking about the conference that's coming up. Very, very exciting stuff. We're going to be right back just after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on StampSeed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. All right, everybody. Before we jump into it, I do want to welcome our special guest on stage. We got Brandon, CEO of Bitcoin Magazine. Brandon, how you doing? Welcome to the show. I think you're muted, my friend.
There we go.
There we go.
How's it going, man?
Thanks
Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us, man. Dude, this is the first time we've spoken since you've been appointed CEO, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's been, I guess now we're on month 6-ish of it. It's been a wild ride so far, but yeah, thank you, man. It's been exciting.
I can imagine, man. CEO of the world's largest Bitcoin media company, Bitcoin, BTC Inc., Bitcoin Magazine, and of course, the world's largest Bitcoin conference, the Bitcoin conference, which is just coming up around the corner. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Brandon, one of the things that I'm like, I have no idea how, because every single year, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens, right? Is they just one up the year prior, right? So, it was like President Trump, and then last year, it was President Trump. He wasn't elected yet. He was just a candidate. And then last year, it was the vice president of the United States that made it to the conference. So this year, I was like, dude, what are they going to get, like Cristiano Ronaldo? Are they going to get like Elon Musk or something? Like, how do you one up, the year prior? And the lineup looks really effing good, man. And it's interesting because it connects with a lot of the stories that we've been covering on Simply Bitcoin. So, of course, you got Afroman. For anyone who doesn't know, we were covering this the other day. Afroman became famous. His house got raided. He made an album about it. Then the police station that he made an album about sued him. Then he won that lawsuit. Like, speaking about the cultural zeitgeist, like Afroman was on top of it, right?
He's and then right now. He is the zeitgeist.
He is the zeitgeist, exactly, right? And then also I saw the time of which his keynote's going to be. It's going to be at 4:20 on the main stage. Wink, wink. Of course, that wasn't on purpose, guys. Of course, you have. Total accident. Of course, you have Michael Saylor, the Chad Saylor. He needs no introduction. And then you have Paul Atkins, which is the head of the SEC. And then you have Mike Sillig, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who's the chairman of the CFTC. Now, on its surface, you're like, Nico, why is that so important? Well, if you guys have been paying attention, the recent announcements from Paul Atkins coming out of the SEC have been extremely pro Bitcoin, pro kind of alternative to the traditional banking system. He even took a couple of jabs at the Federal Reserve, which I found quite interesting. So I'm really excited for his keynote, for what he's talking about. And again, Mike Sillig, again, head of the CFTC. Again, these are both two agencies that during the previous administration were so hostile towards Bitcoin. And now it's crazy to see that now under the Trump administration, you have not only these two agencies, having a pro Bitcoin stance, but these two agencies are actually even appearing at the Bitcoin conference, which is absolutely crazy. And then, of course, you have David Bailey, the CEO and chairman of Nakamoto Inc., and the chairman of BTC Inc. as well. And then you have the president's son, which we were just talking about, Eric Trump, the co-founder and chief strategy officer at American Bitcoin. And then, of course, you have Jack Mallers, Paulo Arduino, Senator Lummis, Adam Back, and many, many more. So, Brandon, just teeing you up here, man. This is a good conference. I'm really, really excited to hear what these two gentlemen have to say. And of course, Afroman and Michael Saylor. I don't know how he's gonna one up his previous keynotes, man, because the keynote that he made when Trump was speaking, when there was like millions of people watching the Bitcoin Magazine live stream, I happened to be on the live. That was awesome. That was fantastic. He said $13 million per coin. And then he went up to it and he said, oh, no, it's going to be $21 million per coin. So is he going to like say $50 million per coin? I have no idea how he's going to one up the previous thing. It could, I have a suspicion he's going to talk about Stretch, which has been an absolute success. Anyways, Brandon, just providing a little bit of context. Welcome to the show, dude. What has you the most hyped? 6 months as the CEO of Bitcoin Magazine. How are you doing? Are you sleeping all right? Are you sleeping at night?
Not yet. Give me 2 more weeks until after the conference, and maybe I'll sleep all right. But no, it's been a lot of fun. You highlighted a lot of really important narratives that we have kind of going into the event. If I could just, first of all, there's 3 speakers that we have confirmed that are all headliners that we haven't been able to announce yet. So, even when I'm looking at that, I'm like, oh man, just wait, we've got more in store. Not to mention,
could you give us a Simply Bitcoin exclusive? There's over 1,000 people watching live, Brand. I'm going to put you on the spot. Little tidbit, little bit of a hint.
I can't give you a hint yet, except that they will be spicy. Some people will love it. Some people will be up in arms. But you know, that's how we play a little bit with the conference. You know, we want to bring in ideas. We want to bring in folks who, you know, can challenge people, can make them think about Bitcoin differently, can embolden their beliefs on Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, some exciting folks that, again, like we already have them locked in. We're just waiting to announce them. A couple more that, you know, we haven't locked in yet, but we're close to locking in. That would be even bigger announcements too. So, you know, the thing with running these conferences, a lot of times you just chip away at it, and then right towards the end, the FOMO period hits, and it all comes together at the same time. So this is going to be one of those events. And but you know, even outside of that, what you've already talked about, I think is incredibly important. You know, this year going into it was definitely a year of like, now that the admin is in place, how do we build a better industry, and how do we not just do it via executive order? How do we have better regulation? How do we, you know, keep Bitcoin building here? So that's been, I think, a major theme and something that we're going to cover quite extensively in the conference. On top of that, you know, you cut off right when you got to her, but Amy Oldenburg from Morgan Stanley, she's the one, you know, heading up their ETF that just launched last week. And you know, much more. David Marcus told us he's got a really big announcement. So I'm very excited. Some of the stuff we are getting the tidbits ourselves, and we're strapping in alongside you guys and ready to see a show.
That's fantastic. Yeah, guys, you definitely don't want to miss this. The Bitcoin conference has a very special place in my heart. It was the first time I ever had a conference appearance. I was on the main stage at Bitcoin 2021, and it was right after Ross made his he recorded something from prison. The Bitcoin conference played it, and our panel was right after that. And that was actually when all the media went in there. And there's this epic picture of me, Svetsky, Nick Hoffman. Who's
this was the toxic Bitcoin
doc,
maximalism.
Toxic Bitcoin doc.
Yeah. And we got this epic picture of Rolling Stone, and it's just all of us, all four of us on stage. One of the things that I said was quoted in the Financial Times. Like, it was wild, guys. And I never forget, I was like so nervous backstage, because I've never done, you know, I've never spoken on stage before. Now I can do it with my eyes closed. But back then it was like the first time, you know, and Simply had like 200 subscribers. And I remember going up to Alex Gladstein, and I went up to him. I was like, dude, like, I've never done this before. Like, do you have any advice? And he looks at me dead in the eye, and he's like, Nico, not that many people have. And he just turns around and walks away. And that just made me even more nervous. But no, it turned out all right. You know,
no, it was one of the best conversations of the whole event.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was especially excited for that one. And it went off great. So, yeah, no, it's these events. If I could like draw a large narrative along them, it's like the first couple of them, our wins were really that you had to pay attention to us. You had to pay attention to Bitcoin, right? You know, Bitcoin was not yet in the mainstream. It was so easy to ignore. And we were able to put together a massive event that forced the world's attention on Bitcoin for a couple of days. And that was a huge win. But then it wasn't enough. So then we had to be like, okay, now that we have this big flat platform, how can we use it in order to further Bitcoin, in this case, you know, United States, but even some of our international conferences in other countries around the world. And so, you know, that's been I think the most recent phase we've been in, is like, yes, you know, we can get the world's attention on Bitcoin for a couple of days, but now how can we make that work in Bitcoin's favor, and not just be sort of a checkbox with the media, but truly try and change the world. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, like, try to change the world every year for Bitcoin. I mean, it's like a monumental task, but you know, so far it's worked. We've had some real wins, and I'm really proud of it.
Absolutely. And I definitely think too, like, we're entering into kind of where Bitcoin is, like, for lack of another expression, penetrating the kind of mainstream cultural zeitgeist. Like, you know, I think you guys did such a great job bringing in Trump, and then Ross's speech last year. For me, it was full circle because again, I saw his recording, you know, right before I went on stage, and then seeing him close out the conference. For me, it was like a full circle in my Bitcoin career, in my Bitcoin journey. Seeing that happen, and then of course it was so emotional, so heartfelt, and this was all part of it, guys. Like, this is something that you guys have to understand. We were talking a lot about this last year during the election. Like, if it wasn't for the Bitcoiners voting block, Ross would still be in prison today, right? Like, I like that is something that people don't understand. Like, Operation Choke Point 2.0 would still be in full force. Now, I know not everything has been fixed, but we've made a tremendous amount of progress. Like, Opti and I were joking, you know, before the election, like we were seriously considering moving to El Salvador because we were like, dude, they're gonna like literally put us in a gulag because of, you know, the amount of regulatory hurdles that was being thrown at our industry. So yeah, it was the epicenter of, you know, of what was the latest going on with Bitcoin. Trump the year before in Nashville, then the vice president in Vegas, and then this year I think it's going to be huge again. The head of the SEC, the head of the CFTC, and as you mentioned, the head of digital assets for Morgan Stanley, which I think is going to be enormous. That's major news, everybody. Morgan Stanley went on TV and she said, like BlackRock, like I don't think people understand the significance of this. Morgan Stanley admitted that their Bitcoin ETF was the most successful ETF launch that they've ever had, right? That is why they're at the conference. It's not because, you know, they read the Bitcoin standard and they're like, oh, okay, you know, fix the money, fix the world. No, they're like, they're attracted to number go up technology. They think they can make they think they can make money on this. So dude, yeah, man,
all of the like Twitter trolls and, you know, like the black pill sort of Bitcoin plebs that are like, oh, you know, Bitcoin is getting captured by Wall Street. It's like, no, Bitcoin is capturing Wall Street. Like, we are pulling them in. They went from ignoring us, they don't care about Bitcoin, to laughing at us, to fighting us. And now they're joining us because they have to. Because the Bitcoin ETF for BlackRock, that's the best performing ETF, you know, in the history of ETFs. Now Morgan Stanley's got theirs. Now, even you saw this week, Goldman Sachs is tiptoeing in with their, you know, first Bitcoin, I guess. I don't know. It's not exactly a Bitcoin ETF, but it's some sort of return or income ETF on Bitcoin. So it's like, it's slowly but surely happening right now before our eyes. And the crazy part is too, it's like we're in a bear market. You know, like this is supposed to be the slow sort of pick up the pieces. Let's move forward as an industry after another kind of crazy cycle. And instead, you're seeing all of this happen in real time in like what's supposed to be the bear market. So that's also a really crazy trend in all of this. It makes me wonder about like the 4-year cycle and just how that's going to match up to previous cycles. But yeah, man, it's truly nuts.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, the bank that I couldn't name, but Brandon named it, so I'm out of the woods. It is Goldman Sachs. It was Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs has been working on, you know, a Bitcoin related product. This is what I've been hinting for many weeks now. Brandon made it just public knowledge, so now I can comment on it.
Well, it came out on Twitter like yesterday.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I was talking about for the many weeks. And again, the fact that Goldman is releasing a Bitcoin related product is a very big deal because again, this is the most prestigious wealth management bank in the world, I would say. And they're very conservative, right? So the fact that they're basically saying, listen, you know, in a way, this is like a stamp of approval, right? So Brandon, could you talk to me a little bit about any other kind of activities that you guys have around the conference? What's going to make this conference special? Because every single year you guys do something different. Every single year you guys try to up the bar like always, and you guys do it very successfully. So anything that you have in your mind that, you know, you're really excited about in terms of Bitcoin 2026. And guys, you do want to get your tickets quickly because the prices do go up. Again, if you use promo code SIMPLY when you're buying your tickets, you will get a 10% discount. But are there any special events that you're looking for other than, of course, the fantastic speakers? Of course, Simply Bitcoin is going to be there. We're going to have a podcasting booth. Very excited about that as well. Maybe you get Brandon to do an interview with me, but I know you're going to be super busy, but hopefully I can get Brandon to do an interview with me. Is there any other type of like special kind of side events or special events that you guys have planned for Bitcoin 2026 this year in Vegas?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So there's a few things going on that I would say are like broad theme tracks, we'll call them, around the event. Obviously, we're kicking things off with Code and Country again this year. Again, last year it was very sort of, hey, we're from the government and we're here to help. This year it's very much like a, hey, what are you guys doing for us? And you know, we're having roundtables with these folks. We're having, you know, long discussions. They're not just showing up and leaving. Like, they are there for the event to learn from the industry and to make sure they're building the right way. I mean, one thing I'll just add, Atkins was on the board of you know, some of the major crypto companies in the space already. Mike Selig was, I think he worked at eToro and Paradigm before he became CFTC chairman. Like, these guys are not just talking heads like, oh, Bitcoin is good. These guys are like legit Bitcoiners in and of themselves. And so like they want to create wins for the industry. And you know, there's other folks like I can't mention yet who, you know, will also be having similar conversations that are going to be there. So that's a massive track. We also have Deal Day this year, which is, you know, our first time in trying to sort of leverage the mainstream sort of Wall Street attention on Bitcoin to help a variety of different companies that are in the process of doing major deals, going public, underwriting investment, what have you. And there's going to be some pretty important meetings and presentations on that that I think are going to be great for the whole industry. Outside of that, you know, for the regular plebs, there's some really fun side events this year. I know there's another hot style takeover. I think there is like an awards show that's being put on. You know, we try and like, we'll have an after party every night, but we try and let people build their own post event, you know, sort of side event schedules and happy hours and all of that. We want everyone to be involved in however they want. So there's tons going on. I think there's already a bunch of Excel sheets floating around. There kind of are every year. So if you're coming, you want to make sure that you get your eyes on that. And we should have, you know, at least a short list of them on the website. And then, yeah, I mean, dude, the beauty of the event is you could go all day, all 3 days, and not manage to see everything we're putting on, not manage to see all the companies that are there. There's just so much. I mean, this industry is so massive. And so, you know, it's going to be a great experience. And the other thing I'll say is like, this is a bear market event, right? You know, it doesn't feel like a bear market for a lot of ways, but it is a bear market. And what that means is this is the best event, for instance, to get a job in the industry. The jobs that are available now are going to be the, you know, working on and building the products that are going to fuel the next cycle. You're not entering in the period of sort of a bull market where there's tons of crazy money flying around and those jobs end up getting like, you know, removed or laid off in the bear market. Like, this is foundational growth moment. So this is the best time to go network. It's also when the egos are a little bit chopped down of some of the biggest folks in the space. You know, during the bull market, there's just so much happening. It's hard to get in contact. Everyone's kind of running to the next meeting. And in these bear market events, you get to actually hang out, get to know people, get to build your network, and ultimately like leverage that to. I've heard time and time again, you know, life-changing sort of moves that people make for themselves based on, you know, who they meet and what they do at the Bitcoin conference.
Absolutely. I love it. Opti, you want to chime in here, bro? Because you've been...
Well, I just want to add that literally Nico came to me at 2022, I believe it was, and was like, hey, do you want to join Simply Bitcoin? He had like a whole spiel. Literally after like 2 minutes, I'm like, yeah, dude, like I'm in. I'm totally in. And here we are now, I don't know, what, 4 years later? So like, whether it's you're going there to get a job, you know, from the companies that are there, or you're just meeting friends that you've built relationships on the internet, you never know. It could build something like this. That's literally how I am here today, is because Nico came to me in 2022 in Miami, was like, join me at Simply. And I'm like, all right, dude, say less. I'm in. And yeah, here we are. Like, we are literally a living testament to that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to go to it. It's a rite of passage. I see so many people on Twitter, guys. This is, and then I love Tatum's response to someone. Brandon, I'm sure you saw it, right? Which is like, everyone was like, oh man, like, you know, the whole pleb narrative. It's like, these sellouts and like whatever. It's like, dude, like, this is like the one time in the year I get to like actually meet my online friends in person in this sick venue and city, and we get to party and drink and have a good time. If you want to stay at home because of your, you know, quote unquote principal pleb, whatever, this and this and that, you know, have fun, right? You're gonna end up watching the conference online anyhow.
Well, dude, and like as well, I'll just add, there are so many Bitcoiners who have like different ideas or different backgrounds, or, you know, what got them into Bitcoin. I mean, just think about like the plebs in, you know, the US versus the ones in Europe versus, you know, the ones in the Middle East versus the one in China, you know, the CEOs, Wall Street, countries, nation states. I mean, you know, energy providers, the list goes on and on. There's so many people that intersect with Bitcoin in their own individual, you know, for their own reasons. And our job as the conference is to try and cover all of those stories, like get every single person who's into Bitcoin one step further on their Bitcoin journey. And so what that means is like, dude, we're going to have speakers and we're going to have content that, you know, on the optimistic side, you couldn't care less about. And on the, you know, downside, you probably hate. You know, frankly, like, we're going to have stuff that you as a Bitcoiner and how you look at Bitcoin, you are completely opposed to. That's okay. Like, you don't have to go see that content. You don't have to listen to them. You can disagree with them. You can listen to them and sharpen your own sort of steelman opposition. Like, we're a marketplace of ideas. That's what Bitcoin's all about. And so, you know, it's okay to not like every speaker that you see. It's okay to not like every session that's in the agenda. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't show up and be part of this community. And like, you know, we're entering into a world where, you know, everyone likes to talk about AI. Everyone likes to talk about how it's changing everything. But dude, I mean, between AI and just the algorithms out there, it is so hard to connect as a community anymore. You just get blasted with bots and, you know, algorithmic just headwinds of trying to talk about Bitcoin. And this is the one place where you actually get to go talk to 20,000, 30,000 other Bitcoiners all at the same time, and just hang out and like build relationships. And so that's what life's all about. You know, it's like, you just want to meet people that are interesting, that are aligned with you, and build a relationship with them and live your life. And so it's not even the same realm as like a Twitter pleb sort of dispute, I would say.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. It's totally worth it, guys. If you guys are trying to meet, again, some of your favorite Bitcoiners or trying to get a job in the industry, there's literally no better event to do that than the Bitcoin conference. And every single year, it continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So hope to see you guys in Las Vegas, Nevada at Bitcoin 2026. It's coming up literally in 11 days. So it's right around the corner. Maybe I coined this term. I call it the Bitcoin Super Bowl weekend, right? Because it really is that. Like, it's 3 days of just nonstop networking, panels, interviews. At least for me, it's just interview, panel, whatever. But again, it depends. Like, what are you trying to get in the industry? This is the place to be. This is the event that you have to go for. This is the biggest Bitcoin conference on the face of the earth. Don't want to miss it this year. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us on Simply Bitcoin Live, man. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you in Vegas in a couple days.
See you soon, man. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, we still got a ton of news for you guys. We have a video from Larry Lepard coming up, and I do want to break it down. It's interesting the way that he framed it. He was talking about the paper Bitcoin narrative and how paper Bitcoin is, how despite there being paper Bitcoin, it could actually work in two ways. You could actually see paper Bitcoin being used to suppress the price, but eventually, like a beach ball, eventually, you might see an explosive run up. So there's a very, very interesting clip of Larry Lepard. I want to play it for you guys, and we will play it for you guys just right after the break. We're going to be right back in just a little bit. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you already know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's bitkey.world with the code SIMPLY. All right, everybody, welcome back. Guys, right now, Bitcoin's at a 40% discount. Bitcoin collateralized loans are some of the, literally one of the best tools to benefit from the wealth of your Bitcoin without having to sell it. And we would not recommend any other company than Ledin. Ledin has proof of reserves. They have an 8-year track record. They've issued over $10 billion in loans, and they've never lost a single sat for their customers. So again, if you want to use the wealth of your Bitcoin without having to sell it, go to Ledin. And Simply Bitcoin viewers, by using the link below, will get 0.25% off their first loan. Also, if it's not your keys, it's not your cheese, which is why we recommend the BitKey hardware wallet. Again, you have to take self-custody of your Bitcoin. If you don't take self-custody of your Bitcoin, it's not really your Bitcoin. So scan the QR code on your screen right now. It'll take you directly to the bitkey.world website where you can use promo code SIMPLY. Again, promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the bitkey.world website. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin. All right, everybody, I told you guys I have a clip of the one, the only, legendary Larry Lepard. Let's check out what he has to say.
Paper Bitcoin, by definition, involves a counterparty. The only form of pure money that is, well, the only two forms don't involve a counterparty are Bitcoin and self-custody and gold and self-custody. And so, you know, you can play all these paper games until, you know, somebody's arm gets shot off or blown off, and then it's not fun anymore, right? And so, as Caitlin Long says, you know, some GSIB is going to fail because they're going to be on the wrong side of the Bitcoin paper trade. And I think that's possible. And so, you know, and it's the paper, by the way, that's creating the rough ride and the ups and downs. And I mean, we should probably be higher right now than we are, but the paper, you know, the paper Bitcoin has suppressed us. But guess what? That works in both directions. When the people who are short that paper realize they're in a world of fucking trouble and have to turn around and buy coins that don't exist, that's how you go from 67 to 400, and that's coming. I mean, that move is coming. So, you know,
tell me when.
Sooner than a lot of people think. And I mean, really, the only remaining criticism of Bitcoin as money is its volatility. That's really the only remaining one. And I think it is, generally speaking, going down over time. But, you know, the paper games are going to have to die, and we're going to have to see more and more organizations that are involved in paper coming a cropper, and they will. I think they will. So I don't worry about, Bitcoin becoming gold 2.0 from a paper point of view. I don't think it'll happen.
So very similar. Also, shout out to our boy Adam O'Brien, CEO and founder of Bitcoin Well, asking the question that everyone was thinking.
Yeah, when, bro?
When is this going to happen? And I think everyone is thinking that, or at least it's in the back of their minds. But what I will say, ladies and gentlemen, is this is exactly what I've been saying, right? In regards to the paper, the paper Bitcoin, right? So yes, I definitely do believe that there's paper Bitcoin, but here's the thing about paper Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is absolutely scarce, unlike gold, eventually people are going to be like, wait a second, why is there 25 million Bitcoin?
42.
Why is there 42 million Bitcoin, as Opti says? Like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And what is going to happen, as Larry Lepard just described? You're going to have a lot of people. It's just going to be a digital bank run. That's what's going to happen, right? And with a digital bank run, guess what? All those companies that are holding paper Bitcoin and their depositors are going to say, wait a second, like, I don't actually believe that you this is what happened with FTX, by the way. I don't believe you have the Bitcoin that you said you have. Give it to me. Yeah. That's what happens with paper Bitcoin, right? And I think that once that plays out for the first time, I think a lot of these institutions that are potentially playing paper Bitcoin games, I think are going to be a little bit hesitant about doing it next time for sure, right? So absolutely masterclass piece. And Larry just dropping the sauce. I think we're gonna have him on the show in May. I think it'd be great to just pick Larry's brain on this, and maybe we get Caitlin and Larry. I think that'd be cool. That'd be dope. Opti, I want to get your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, obviously we've talked about this, but I think when like Larry said, when a lot of people think about paper Bitcoin, they usually only think about it in terms of price suppression and saying it's a bad thing. And look, I'm not for fractional reserve banking by any means, but there is a positive here, at least for us holders that take our Bitcoin into self-custody, is when there is a bank run on Bitcoin, which we know eventually will happen. Again, Hal Finney said this pretty much like a week after Bitcoin was created. Eventually, there will be fractional reserve Bitcoin banks and full reserve Bitcoin banks. But when that does happen, and if you aren't using these products and you do have Bitcoin in self-custody, that's when we see, I don't even know what's bigger than a Omega candle, Godzilla candle, God candles, whatever the candle is going to be, it's going to be very violent. Now, I think the most interesting part was the very end of this, where, and you might not understand kind of what Larry was saying, but when he said the reason Bitcoin will not end up as gold 2.0 is for this very reason. And I get a lot of flack for this on the show. I get a lot of flack from a lot of gold bugs or people that are kind of Bitcoin and gold centric. Is I usually say, hey, look, I like gold. I wear gold. I just don't think it's money for the digital, 21st century. And in my opinion, and maybe it's cynical, maybe it's a little misguided, maybe it's just biased because I am a Bitcoiner and it's a good talking point. But from my vantage point, gold failed, and that's why we got fiat money in the first place. So that's literally what Larry was saying with that idea that Bitcoin isn't going to be gold 2.0. Yes, we are seeing a lot of products and vehicles to add more paper Bitcoin into the system, but Bitcoin's inherent scarcity, and I mean, you could argue the idea of inherent and inherent value is it inherent? Why I'm blanking right now, but you can argue
not enough nicotine.
They don't know my secret power. It's caffeine and nicotine. Anyways, I do not endorse that for the children watching. One of the very strong mechanisms, and I was actually having this conversation this morning, is when the market, when all of the investors in Bitcoin, and I mean that by the term investors in Bitcoin, not people that think Bitcoin has money, but investors in Bitcoin that just want fiat gains, once they understand what scarcity means, what 21 million hard cap actually means and the implications of that, then you're going to really start to see I think a stronger move into Bitcoin narrative of it being a hard money, just, hard cap, hard money, full stop. What we're seeing right now is a lot of people are still playing fiat games with Bitcoin. And there is a potential for creating even more paper Bitcoin or creating fiat on top of Bitcoin, which some very prominent Bitcoiners are, you could argue, pushing sort of that narrative. But once the world wakes up to what scarcity means and that they can't actually get away with these games for that much longer, it will also add another Omega God candle on top of it. And so I truly agree with what Larry said, that we are not building, digital gold here. This is not gold 2.0. We are not going to fall into the same problems, the same trappings that gold fell into and recreate fiat. Once people fully transfer to the Bitcoin standard, a lot of us call it hyper-Bitcoinization, the Bitcoin standard, then a lot of that old thinking will fade away and we will be living in a world that just uses Bitcoin as money. Now, it could be towards the end of our lives. Who knows? That's why I keep saying we might be in this for a long time. It might not happen in our lives. It could be our grandchildren. But at a certain point, there will be a collective consciousness, collective consensus on the idea of like, wow, what were we doing with fiat money? Like, what crazy experiment did we get ourselves into?
It's like, that was obvious.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're not there yet because a lot of people are still looking at Bitcoin as an investment, but there will be a point where we fully let go of the old thinking. And it's Bitcoin as money. It's not gold 2.0. It's not digital gold or whatever the narrative is. It's just Bitcoin as the hardest money in the world. 21 million hard cap. Sats are the standard. Everything priced in sats, but it'll be a little bit.
I want to talk about this last comment. Self-custody will be illegal. And that's a perfect segue for the next news segment where we're going to be covering this. We covered it kind of in the beginning of the show where I was talking to you guys about where we are in the movie. So essentially, we kind of won the war of the disintermediation of the information and state. What we're heading into is, I would say, the war between the disintermediation of money and states. But it's interesting because essentially Bitcoin has infiltrated and has incentivized many people that are part of the state, right? So again, this is a bottom-up peaceful revolution. This isn't, when I say revolution has this like connotation where it's like, has to be like, you have to pick up the rifles, you have to rise up, you have to bring the pitchforks and the torches. No. I'm not talking about that type of revolution. This is a peaceful revolution. And the way that we win this is literally getting other people to see the benefits of Bitcoin. They benefit from them too. It's aligned incentives. Everybody wins, right? And again, you want people that are Bitcoiners within the government, within the state, because again, they're not going to act against their own self-interest. And at the end of the day, human beings are driven by incentives. Ultimately, no one is better than their incentives. So I do want to cover this topic. It's a perfect segue where someone said in the chat, Bitcoin in self-custody will eventually be made illegal. That is 100% what they're going to try. And I'll make the case for that just right after the break. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high-performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at HIVEdigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money, it's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. All right, everybody, we are back. Now, why am I talking about this? Like, why should you care? Like, why does this matter? Like, is Nico being a panicking? Is Nico being a panicking? Lol. So, guys, part of the reason that Simply Bitcoin, we were the first, by the way. I remember my tweet. I said, and I had it saved in drafts for the longest time, but I didn't believe that the Overton window had sufficiently shifted enough for me to send out that tweet without getting major blowback. And I posted, I said, it's probably not a good idea that the Biden administration wins another election if you're in the Bitcoin industry. And that tweet absolutely blew up. And then shortly after, you had Trump going out on stage saying basically, hey, I'm going to free Ross Ulbricht. And then he says, I'm against central bank digital currencies. And then he got such good feedback from the crowd on those things that he tested it. I never forget it. It was like yesterday. He tested it a little bit. He was like, and also, by the way, I will protect your right to self-custody. I'll protect your Bitcoin. And the crowd went wild. And then one event led to another. And then he ended up at the Bitcoin conference. And we were just talking to Brandon about that, right? But unfortunately, Trump's presidency hasn't gone exactly the way that his base wanted it to go. And one of the main issues here is that Trump won on specifically running on no more wars in the Middle East. He didn't want any more wars in the Middle East. He said specifically no more wars in the Middle East. That was like one of his campaign promises. And now we find ourselves in a war in the Middle East. And that led to rising gas prices. So these are all things that he ran on that he walked back. Right now, I have to give President Trump a lot of credit because from the Bitcoin industry perspective, he's done a lot of good. But from his core voter base, right, it does seem kind of like it does seem kind of like a betrayal, right? And also, not to mention the fact that now he's going like back to back with the Pope, right? So if you're a Catholic, right, like it's probably not a good idea to put a Truth Social post of you as Jesus healing someone and then you basically calling out the Pope because a major part of Trump's voter base were Catholics, right? So like that probably wasn't a good idea. So there's a lot of things that the Trump administration did that exactly weren't very good for his voter base, right? Like what it does is it's not that his voter base is going to vote for the other side. It's that they're not going to feel motivated to get out to vote. So why am I turning orange?
Sorry, you look white. I'm trying to adjust.
And like what's happening now is essentially we're heading into the midterms. I would say Trump did not do as good of a job as he could have done in terms of making his voter base happy. I think he made Washington happy. I definitely think he made the bureaucracy, not all of the bureaucracy, but some of the bureaucracy happy. And then you can get into, you know, the rabbit hole of what him attacking Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Alex Jones, which were some of his biggest proponents. I don't think Trump would have gotten elected if it wasn't for the support of these people. And then going out there and basically calling them out again, like, regardless of who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah,
like,
that post was actually hilarious.
Like it was, all these posts were, bro, the post of him acting like it is blasphemous, but the post of him like as Jesus healing someone, like, dude, like, you know,
I don't know. I like the Alex Jones Tucker Candace post better. That shit was so funny.
If you're you know, a Christian, you're looking at that, you're like, dude, like, you think you're God? And then
let's not talk about the truth. Let's keep it moving.
Okay. So the reason I'm saying all of this is Trump is dividing his base. That's not good. Half of his base, they feel disillusioned. MAGA, I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. And now it
is if you're like over 50.
Now it looks like the Democrats, like, they had it so in the bag, you know. Now it looks like the Democrats, according to Polymarket, have a 61% chance of winning the U.S. presidential election in 2028. And they have an even bigger chance of winning the House and the Senate in November. Now, the reason I'm bringing all of this stuff up is Senator Warren is the head of the Senate Banking Committee for the Democrats. And she is not a fan of Bitcoin. So if you think Operation Choke Point 2.0 is done, it might be done, but we might start seeing Operation Choke Point 3.0. And then this time, I think it's going to be a much bigger deal because Bitcoin is so heavily integrated into the traditional financial system. By 2028, it will be undeniable. So for them to kind of reverse a lot of these things, they're really going to have to pull out all the stops, and they're going to have to be a lot more aggressive than they were during Operation Choke Point 2.0. Now, what's working against them is that the youth, by and large, completely support Bitcoin. They're 100% behind Bitcoin. They support Bitcoin. They believe in Bitcoin. So they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and this is what they tried to do during the Kamala election. During the Kamala election, they realized how unpopular it was to be anti-crypto, right? Like, Elizabeth Warren released her thing, anti-crypto army. Like, dude, like, that's not going to connect with anybody under the age of 40, right? And then they were like, yeah, Kamala kind of accepts Bitcoin, but kind of whatever. But there was never an official release by the Democratic Party. They never had an official stance on Bitcoin. So that's the crux of the issue. So anyways, why am I bringing all this up? This is kind of like a foreshadowing of this. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren warns X money poses risks to consumers, national security, and financial stability ahead of launch. Where have we heard that before? It's like she copy-pasted the same exact excuses that she used for Bitcoin, and she's using that for X money. Now, the reason that's a problem for X money is because X is a centralized platform. The reason that's not a risk for Bitcoin is because Bitcoin is a decentralized protocol. That doesn't mean, though, that they won't go after Bitcoin companies and Bitcoiners, right? Think about it. It was CZ, Arthur Hayes, so many, Bitcoin/crypto entrepreneurs were literally jailed during, not to mention the samurai guys who were literally jailed under the previous administration. So I'm just giving you guys a taste of what I think is going to happen over the next, 3 years or so. And I got to say, as much as I love what Trump has done, I think this pendulum swing back is going to be like brutal, to say the least. And it doesn't help that he launched meme coins. It doesn't help that his kids are so heavily involved in the industry and all of that stuff. Because when this pendulum swings back, like, boy, oh boy, I don't think it's just going to be Elon under investigation. I think it's going to be Bitcoin companies under investigation. I think anything related to Bitcoin / crypto is going to be villainized, demonized, and they're going to be 10 times more aggressive than they were during Operation Choke Point 2.0. That was the ending story of today's show. It's important to keep an eye out. As single issue voters, guys, I'm going to continue supporting the parties that obviously support the Bitcoin / crypto platforms, but or policies. But again, it doesn't effing help when you go against your base. It doesn't help. And it's unfortunate that it's bipartisan in this manner. Hopefully that changes in the future. But I see a freight train. I see a policy regulatory freight train coming at full speed, out for vengeance, and they're going to use everything and anything to. I think Trump's going to get impeached again, and especially if they take the House, they're definitely going to impeach him. So any type of crypto policy, forget about it. That's going to be frozen, essentially. So anyhow, I'm going to leave it at that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed...
Wait, can I make a joke here real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Remember when they used to fight Bitcoin and Bitcoin went up, and then we had a president that embraced Bitcoin and Bitcoin went down? So maybe, just maybe, numbers going up. Hey, we're going to be in the gulags, but number is going to be ripping. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing. Of course, check out our sponsor, which we talked a whole lot about, Bitcoin 2026. You guys don't want to miss it. You can use promo code SIMPLY. Again, promo code SIMPLY. You get 10% off your tickets to the Bitcoin conference in Vegas, Las Vegas, Nevada. You're definitely not going to miss it. Love you guys. We'll see you on the next episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.